that Putin had been missing for over a week. And it's a fact. He's nowhere to be seen. The Kremlin website posted a picture of him greeting Russian Paralympic athletes that just came back to Russia. But the guy, well, very odd situation because, if you go to the website of the Kremlin, you will see some videos, official videos, and photos are always perfect high-resolution quality, okay? On Friday, they posted some photos of Putin with the athletes, low quality, as if someone took it on a cell phone. That's very odd. It's the first time I saw it. Very unprofessional. And the guy who is in the picture, well, in my opinion, he doesn't look like Putin. I believe that something is going on because there are more and more signs. When there's a coup happening in Russia, we know because you can't hide that. They will tell us. They will say, well, you know what? Putin has turned out a spy. We have taken over the country. We will fix things. That's the coup.
This is the Global Gambit.
Welcome back to the Global Gambit, everyone. My name is Pyotr. This is a podcast about geopolitics, economics, international relations, strategy. And we have a reoccurring appearance with my guest today, Konstantin Samoilov of Inside Russia, the YouTube channel, which takes us behind the scenes and deep inside Russia itself. And as I say, we do this on a reoccurring basis once a month, where we get together, Konstantin and I, to discuss and reflect on the latest developments within Russia, but also its foreign policy. So if you're interested in the war in Ukraine, from Russia's perspective, what's happening inside Putin's inner circles, and of course, the Russian economy, that's what you should be here to stick around for and join us for both part one and part two, because as you know, I like to be a little bit of a cheeky devil and split these conversations into two halves. So be sure to subscribe to both our channels for when those go live. But Konstantin, as always, it's a delight to have you with us. And, well, it's been quite a month upcoming to the end of March. Just a little thing called the Iran war taking off on February 28th and throwing the entire world into chaos, but also attention away from the war in Ukraine and what's happening internally in Russia. Some critical questions I have for you on that a little bit later. But firstly, how do you look at the situation in Iran and what's happening within Putin's mind?
Well, the war in Iran is a mess. What it appears is the United States of America is making the same mistake Russia did when it invaded Ukraine. It started a quick in-and-out operation that turned sour and, transformed into a very long war. And this, what it looks like, is happening in Iran right now, and the whole world is suffering. And the United States is suffering as well. And the longer this war lasts, the more effect it'll have on the United States too. In terms of Russia's angle, well, the war is definitely helping Putin. It's giving him economic break because Russia's bread maker, oil, just skyrocketed in price. And basically Russia, the sanctions have been temporarily lifted from Russian oil, and Putin has started enjoying selling oil at high price again. That's one thing that can prolong Russia's agony, and that is happening right now.
It is, and there's a little bit more to the economic side that I want to come to also later on. But again, sticking with Iran right now, the Russians are supposedly supporting the Iranians with intelligence sharing and giving them sort of, should we say, what we call non-lethal forms of aid. Right, so the Chinese have been buying oil from the Russians. That doesn't necessarily mean that they help the Russians on the battlefield, but it does support the Russian economy, which by extension supports their war efforts. So do you think the Russians are supporting the Iranians in a significant way? And if so, how much can they actually provide, given how much Putin is focused on Ukraine?
I am sure that they are providing some aid, not physical aid, because they have been receiving aid from Iran all these times. And first Shahid drones, then missiles, then anti-missile, low-altitude anti-missile defense detection systems, and so forth. Russia is providing to Iran of what is happening in the skies around Iran, intelligence on actions of Israel in the United States and allies. And Putin, from what I understand, Putin does not even hide it. And I can understand Russia provides military data, but then what I can't understand is that when Putin starts blackmailing America with that data, saying, I will stop doing it to Iran if you stop helping Ukraine, okay? How the USA is taking it lightly, I don't quite understand. It's being blackmailed by Putin. He's admitted basically that he's supplying Iran with military intelligence data, and U.S. servicemen are killed because there's a direct result of that Russian data provided to Iran. And the USA is just, I don't understand this world has gone crazy, Pyotr,
Yeah, it has, but does that not mean that Trump is effectively, in the eyes of some, a Russian asset? Doesn't that necessitate that he's doing this deliberately because he's ultimately controlled by Putin, and therefore this is all part of some, strategic plan? Some people use the idea, this concept of Krasnov, the agent, right? That Trump is, that's. I'm going to be honest that I think that that's rather preposterous. Do I think Trump has sympathies and favoritism for Putin? Yes, but I don't think he's some KGB agent that was in a psyops from the 1980s. I think that's a bit of an extreme version, but what do you think?
Pyotr, I'll tell you what I think about Trump in a second. But first, I would like to attract your attention to the fact that a lot of people are taking this situation of America is being blackmailed by Russia in a very shallow way. All I hear is Trump. Trump does this, Trump does that. Oh, Trump is a Russian agent. He's not Russian agent, and so forth. That's not about Trump. Not anymore. It's about America as the country, Americans, American taxpayers and voters, okay? If Trump is doing something, okay, he is a president. He can make mistakes, he takes certain actions, but he's just one person. But if he does something that contradicts American values, and when Americans hear about that, and it becomes public knowledge, okay, it's not Trump's issue any longer. It's America. It's how people are reacting when they hear that, okay, Russia is blackmailing us. It says it supplies data to Iran, and Americans are getting killed because of that. That's not about Trump. Again, it's about how they take that information, what they do. Because
Right.
that's exactly what Russians did 4 years ago. When they heard that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine on absolutely bogus reasons, denazification and demilitarization. Okay, Putin made that decision. What about 146 million Russians who heard that? What did they do? Nothing. Okay, that's their responsibility. They took that responsibility by doing nothing. Now Americans it's their responsibility as well to react, and it's up to them how they react. They just hear about that and they do nothing. Well, then they become Russians.
But what
And then
precisely?
what I think about Trump, I don't believe he's a Russian agent. Okay, it just doesn't make any sense. What kind of information Russians would have on Trump, so Trump would be so scared this information would be revealed? I mean, after the Epstein files, what else can you get out there? Okay. He had some sexual encounters in Moscow with prostitutes. Probably Trump would be proud of that if he made public knowledge, and his voter base would support that. Okay, why would he be blackmailed by Putin or by the KGB for that? What possibly he could have done in Russia or with Russians, so he would be scared of that. So I don't believe he's a Russian agent.
So you don't, but then why is Trump willing to really reduce sanctions on the Russians when he's also forcing the shadow fleet and tankers to play ball? On the one hand, he's wanting to improve relations with this Russian Federation, but as we saw earlier on in the year, he's been targeting tankers. With the British seizing that tanker at the end of January. So, what is going on here? Does he want to bring Russia back into the economy or not?
You are asking me the question I cannot answer, really. I don't think that anyone knows. Only Trump does, and perhaps he doesn't even know himself. If I'm wrong, and I could be wrong about him being Russian agent, but if I'm wrong and he turns out to be Russian agent, then my world would be placed upside down. Okay? Most likely, this is what I think. In his mind, he's trying to make some kind of business deals with Putin and the surrounding of Putin. I think that he treats that as purely business, or he's trying to cut the spheres of influence. Although the United States of America is so much more powerful than Russia, and Trump walked into his presidency with an upper hand. Okay, he could have finished Putin by now, and he could have had a democratic president run in Russia right now who'd be talking to the United States and listening to the United States. Instead, he blew that upper hand, and he's trying to make some kind of deals. But what kind of deals, no one knows.
Okay, interesting. Now let's switch gears a little bit, because there's been a lot of rumblings in the past week, let's say. A lot of sister channels that I collaborate with, like Paul Wahlberg or Jake Bro or Silicon Curtain, Jason Smart. They've all argued or suggested that there is an internal power struggle. Is probably the phrasing I would use, but some of them has gone as far as to say that are there rumblings of a coup? Now, my position on this is quite clear, but what's yours? Is Putin? Where is? Oh, okay. I'll expand the question even more. People are saying, where is Putin? Putin hasn't been seen for 5 minutes. Therefore, he's disappeared. There's been a coup. That's not really how my mind works. But what do you think?
I actually made a community post on my channel yesterday that Putin had been missing for over a week, and it's a fact. He's nowhere to be seen. The Kremlin website posted a picture of him greeting Russian Paralympic athletes that just came back to Russia. But the guy, very odd situation, because, if you go to the website of the Kremlin, you will see some videos, official videos, and photos are always perfect high-resolution quality, okay? On Friday, they posted some photos of Putin with the athletes, low quality, as if someone took it on a cell phone. That's very odd. It's the first time I saw it. Very unprofessional. And the guy who is in the picture, in my opinion, he doesn't look like Putin. Okay, I could be wrong, but that's what I think. Now, that's a fact. Putin's been absent, okay? But what I find wrong is that connecting that fact, that his absence with a potential coup. I don't think there's a coup happening right now, and him being gone for weeks is nothing new. That happened before. But I believe that something is going on because there are more and more signs. You see, in my analysis, I always give facts. Small news, small events happen, and I call them the golden nuggets. Small pieces of information gold, and I put them together, and they draw me a bigger picture. So what I'm seeing is many signs that something is not well. And when there's a political instability, coup is a very strong word. When there's a coup happening in Russia, we know, because you can't hide that. They will tell us. They will say, well, you know what? Putin has turned out a spy. We have taken over the country. We will fix things. That's the coup. And there is no coup right now. But the situation is heating up. And something will happen soon. That's what I believe in. And that's my latest reports on my channel Inside Russia are about that. Look, there are incredibly numerous signs. First of all, Russian economy has been landsliding in the last 2 weeks. If I give analogy of Titanic, and if you watch the movie, you probably have. There's a moment when Titanic angled enough to start it submerging underwater fast. Before, it was pretty much business as usual for hour and a half when it hit the iceberg. Okay, it basically stayed afloat. And everyone, when they saw that the iceberg was past Titanic, well, the Titanic was doomed and people's lives, thousands of passengers, they were over. It just would take a few more minutes. They didn't know that. Everyone went back to do their things as if business was usual. Life was normal. And that was happening in Russia. And all of a sudden, Titanic angled enough so the water started flooding one part of it. And when people saw water rushing towards them, they, with fear in their eyes, they started running back, okay, to the part that was hanging above the water. And that is exactly the moment in Russian economy now. Companies are closing by tens of thousands every single week. People are closing doors. By the end of the year, there will be very few small businesses left in Russia, okay? Russian Ministry of Finance has made this data classified, how many companies close in Russia. They give official numbers, but I have my insides in the ministry. They say that's lie, because they're afraid to give real numbers.
Yeah.
Inflation is skyrocketing. Prices are going up. People are laid off by hundreds of thousands. Large companies are closing. It's the landslide, and Russian economy has stopped being sustainable. Now, you asked me about Iran in the beginning of our conversation. There's more money coming in from oil trade right now. There's no question about it, in the last 2 weeks. And that is a temporary easement for Putin and for the economy. But he cannot fix the economy with this money. He can prolong the agony. So the economy is number one. There's a great social unrest right now because people have finally started paying the bill of Vladimir Putin waging the war on Ukraine. And it's making their lives absolutely terrible. Okay, and if you go to, let's say, my city, Rostov-on-Don in southern Russia, you will see people going on the streets, taking newspapers or sheets, putting them on the ground, and taking their belongings, whatever they can find in their homes, to sell.
Where have you had this?
I have footage, I showed it in my channel. Rostov-on-Don, it's happening now.
So they're taking their possessions in newspapers and selling it.
I will send you videos after we're done with this conversation. Insert those videos. That I have one video and one picture. Insert at this point in our conversation, so people see that's how bad it has become in Russia. I didn't see. Now I saw that back in 1992 after the USSR broke down and Russia was transforming from socialist system to capitalism, okay? And it was very hard time. So 92, 93, and 94 were terrible years. Now, I haven't seen that since 94. Now, it's back to 1992. It's terrible. The Russian economy is landsliding. That's becoming a social issue. It's not just an economic issue anymore. In Novosibirsk province and neighboring provinces, the authorities are slaughtering the cattle of small farmers by thousands of cows every single day, tens of thousands every week. Okay, that's becoming a social issue. People have started protesting. They record videos and post them in Instagram. If you just go and look at Russian Instagram, Russian-speaking Instagram section, you will see a lot of people, businessmen, businesswomen, closing down their shops, and they're filming their emotions, and they make it available to the whole world to see. Now there's a huge movement of people standing up, trying to defend the farmers, small farmers in Novosibirsk. People who have, take away their cows, and they have no means to live. And the icing on the cake is the patriots, propagandists, start turning away from Putin. I'm sure you've had the story of Ilya Remeslo, longtime Putin supporter who was the member of Russian public chamber, the official that Putin appointed him to the public chamber. He was the member of public chamber for 6 years. He personally knows Putin. He interviewed Putin. Last week, he came publicly and accused Putin. He called him the liar, the thief, the war criminal, and he called for Putin to be punished and thrown in prison. Next day, he was taken to a mental hospital in St. Petersburg, where he remains now, mental hospital number 3. And other Z channels, pro-Kremlin channels, they started supporting him. At least 2 channels started saying, hey, he didn't say anything, he didn't lie about anything. We also have questions to Putin. Now, Russia is shaking. It's on the verge of explosion, like a volcano before explosion, okay? And I'm seeing more and more signs. So is there a coup happening right now? No. But you know what? The coup will happen very quickly, and it will be very prepared. And now that preparations to the situation are, you know, they're taking place, I believe. The latest news I just saw literally an hour before we started this conversation. You can go to an official Putin's journalist, Pavel Zarubin. He has a Telegram channel, and he was interviewing Bortnikov, the head of the KGB. And Bortnikov said that the Russia is being run by the British spies. Not is being run, like the British agents are in charge of Russia. Hello? Who is in charge of Russia? Vladimir Putin? Is he a British spy? That's the head of the KGB speaks, you know? So he was very ambiguous in his words, but that's how I understood them. Now, that's a mighty powerful force, the KGB, okay? And that guy never speaks publicly about anything. The last time I saw him speak publicly was when Putin invited him, the Minister of Defense Belousov, and Shoigu, the head of the Security Council, when the Ukrainians pushed into Russia in Kursk province back in 2024. Bortnikov was there. He didn't speak much, but he was listening. But that was the last time I saw him in public. And now he speaks publicly, saying that Russia is run by the British. I don't know. It speaks volumes to me.
Right.
I can send you that interview as well.
I'm not sure I'm going to have time to watch all the clips you're going to send me, Konstantin, at this rate. There's a ton there you've shared, and I'm not entirely sure what to hone in on. I mean, let's just take a step back for a second. You're saying tens of thousands of cattle a day being killed. I mean, Konstantin, at that rate, we'd be out of cows within a week. How can this be verified that they're killing tens of thousands of cattle a week? I mean, there aren't that many cows in Russia to kill, surely. Like, how is this? How are these figures sustainable to make such a claim?
Okay, Pyotr, you know what? That's a good question. There are millions and millions of heads of cows in Russia. And I also will send you the numbers. I'll research. Now, what's happening in Novosibirsk province is there are 2 types of agriculture enterprises. The first type is large corporations.
My family lives in Novosibirsk. My father grew up in Novosibirsk, so I'm quite familiar with the Oblast and region.
Okay, so there are large agricultural enterprises. Miratorg, one among them, is owned by Dmitry Medvedev's family. Yep. And there is second type, numbers of small farms, and their number of cows they own ranges from 1 cow to 200-300, and the state has gone after small farmers. There are literally tens of thousands of farmers. In villages, there are farmers in every village, in Novosibirsk, in Krasnoyarsk, and in other provinces. I will send you the numbers, but I guarantee that there are millions of cows in same as millions of... Tambovsky Bikun, former customer of mine, when I worked in the power generation construction industry, we were trying to sell them a power plant. I think Tambovsky Bikun alone had 3.5 million pigs all over Russia in different enterprises. And I'm sure that the number of pigs and cows are in tens of millions.
Okay. Yeah, because my job as interviewer or co-hosting with you is to critically analyze what you're saying
And I
and
appreciate that. Thank you.
debate, not merely accept the information for what it is, because there's plenty of channels and creators who do that. They just take what's said at face value without taking a step back and being like, well, hang on, if we do the maths on that, tens of thousands a day, extrapolate that out over a few months, a year, like at some point you're going to reach the end, like you're going to run out of things to kill, right?
I did not say that been doing it for months. It started about 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago, and I
Right.
don't. I believe that it's going to last for basically years, because what they're gonna do is they're gonna slaughter all the cows that are property of small farmers in Novosibirsk province. They're not gonna leave one single cow, only large
Right.
enterprises, and they're gonna stop. Okay, so it's not about Russia. It's
Just
about
the It's just the animals owned by small businesses. Then it's about the small
yes, oh
businesses, not the
yes, oh
conglomerates.
yes,
Okay, interesting. Well,
yes.
that kind of nuance is critical there. So the state is becoming a lot more centralized around the sort of what market monopolies, duopolies, the big sort of few names. Interesting. So when we then hear about this, and I'm glad you emphasized about coup being a strong word, because I think it's pretty clear. We know when a coup happens, right? 91's quite infamous for its coups, and the grandiose imagery that associated with the coups, standing on the tank and all that. So I don't think a coup, in the truest sense, in Russia is going to be a quiet little thing. And I like your use of the term political instability, because I think it's a broader term that better captures the growing situation. So when we try, excuse me, when we try to understand what's happening within Putin's inner circle, right? Whilst you were sharing some of your comments about the disappearance of Putin, I just had a little type here on my laptop to see, Putin disappeared, Putin lack of appearance, and one of the top searches was a article from 2015. Another one was from a month ago. The point I'm trying to make here is that this has happened before. I don't think we should get too carried away and sort of thinking this is it. Putin's gone. New Russia inbound. End of the war, unfortunately. So what do you think's actually going on behind the scenes? Do you think Putin is simply unwell? Do you think that he's having to do a bit of a purge as he's done, a mini purge as he's done in the past?
Now, I think that, first of all, I'm sure that we don't know everything, that we don't have the whole picture of what's going on in the Kremlin and behind the scenes. Okay, there's
Mm.
so much more that's in the dark to us. Vladimir Putin is a paranoid man. He holds the absolute power over a very large country, and there are quite a few forces inside that country that are working against Putin. The KGB is one force, and the political clans are other forces, and his job as the ultimate ruler is to be above those forces and have them balanced. Now, I believe that there's been a disbalancing going on because Russia is in trouble. Okay, balance can be, well, it was balanced before the war. Okay, the rules of the game were absolutely clear and accepted by everyone. Now, Putin is the first person who destroyed the rules of the game. He changed them without consent from the power clans. Okay, and in order to keep everyone in place, he needs to beef up the Siloviki. And the gem of Siloviki is the secret police KGB. So, and he's been beefing it up to keep other clans in place and people in place. To keep people in place. And that's a existential threat to Vladimir Putin, because if KGB becomes too powerful and no one else will be able to stand up against it, then the KGB will simply walk into Putin's palace and say, hey, Vlad, howdy. Now you're going to do what we say.
Howdy.
And then Putin wouldn't be able to do anything about that, okay? Now, perhaps there are still other forces like the army, the other oligarchs, when they see that happen, they will put up a fight to take the KGB down. But then if the KGB becomes too strong, this is the game over for Vladimir Putin. Now, I think that right now, there are things happening in Russia that we don't know, and the head of KGB, Bortnikov, just kind of gave us a little glimpse by saying that Russia is run by the British agents, foreign agents, including the British ones. Now,
If I
would be very concerned.
Just on that point, Konstantin, and then I'll pass it back to you. But what I think is really interesting about this is obviously being half English, is that since Trump retook office, America's no longer become enemy number one. There's been plenty of coverage here. I'm coming to you from London at the moment, and the various political staff, security staff that I speak to occasionally, Russia has its sights on London. Britain is enemy number one in the eyes of Moscow now, which I find very fascinating, and that seems only reaffirmed by what you're sharing about these comments by this other person. So I just wanted to add that context because I think it's interesting. But
let me finish with what I started, and I'll tell you about this, what you just brought up about England being the enemy number one. That's very interesting observation, and you are right on about that. So if I were Putin and I heard that message to Zarubin about Russia being run by the English, that's a very strong statement. It can be interpreted in many different ways, okay? And what I think Putin right now is hiding in his bunkers, one of his bunkers, and trying to assess the situation, what's going on. He's trying to come up with a plan, and he's trying to make deals with people or force actions onto some people, okay? He's very afraid of what happened for his personal safety. He knows what happened to Iranian leadership. Everyone, Khamenei was the first one, and everyone has been killed. You don't need boots on the ground to take care of Putin these days. All you need is what America has and does very well. You need missiles and you need the guidance system, okay? I am absolutely positive that he is very afraid of being taken down by, whoever has the capability. And he's in the bunker he has been for quite some days now, and he will remain until he's absolutely sure he is safe, and then he will reemerge, if he reemerges. I think that's what's going on. And about Britain, that's the next topic. Britain being enemy number one, you're absolutely right. Before, in 2024, until Trump became the president, America was the enemy number one. It was the ultimate evil, the Satanists, okay, the no good. The West was rotten, and it was led by America. So there was no question, America was the enemy. As soon as Donald Trump came to the office, and I've talked about it so many times in my live streams, that America ceased to be the enemy. Europe became the enemy. And now, in Europe, they are isolating the UK, the Anglichanka, that's what they say, Anglichanka. Anglichanka got it. That's the word, the expression that they use all the time. And they gotta be an enemy, right? The enemy is England now, because how can Russia live without enemies? Who is to blame? Obviously, it's the enemies that are slaughtering the cattle in Novosibirsk. And I'm they are positive it's the enemies who are keeping the interest rate high. It's the enemies in the central bank. It's the enemies in Novosibirsk province. It's the enemies who are ruining Russian economy. It's the enemies who are keeping Russian soldiers uninformed, without communication, and so they can't push further into the Ukrainian territory. It's the enemies inside the army, Russian armed forces, who are, destroying Russian army, confusing it. So Russian army is weak because of the enemies. Of course, that's been the core idea of Putin's ideology. Russia is righteous. Russia is the pillar of light, the last pillar of light in the world, surrounded by the enemies. The United States is not the enemy any longer. No, who can be the enemy? They tried making France, didn't work, but England is, hey, it's been the enemy forever.
The Russians love the French, and that's very difficult to admit as a Brit. A positive sentiment about the French. I'm joking, everybody. I just, as an Englishman, I have to take a little jibe at the French any opportunity I can. It's not a personal choice. It's a contractual obligation. It's a legal requirement. I'm kidding, but go on,
Pyotr,
Konstantin.
wait a second. I know. It's you. It's you who are running Russia. It's you who are making the cattle, slaughtering the cattle and those. You.
What?
You're the
Look,
Englishman, you know?
okay?
It's
I'm
your fault.
perfectly
Russian
connected to both
economy,
sides,
you're
right?
responsible. You ruined it.
Well,
That's
largely,
joking,
I mean,
sorry.
but for everyone to understand why, they're going to have to join us in part two. So we'll see you there.